Meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody make sure their mics are turned on. If we could pause for a moment of silence in memory of Pearl Harbor. Thank you. Presentations. First up is our Senior Services Director, Tamith Rossi. Tamith, if you could.
Good evening, Board. I'm going to be super quick because I know you have a very long evening ahead of you. And hopefully I'll kick it off with some positive news. And I want to thank Jeff for asking me to be here this evening. We just received a very great honor here in Southbury and certainly for our center. We were recognized by the Western Connecticut Area Agency on Aging as a focal point. Basically what this means is it sets our senior center apart from other senior centers within the state. 12 were recognized within our district. Western Connecticut Area Agency on Aging, I believe, covers 41 towns within their district. So only to be one of the illustrious 12 was a great honor. This was born from an application that had never been pursued by any of the previous directors, which I confirmed with the director of the WCAAA and was rather surprised given our high population of seniors. So I felt that it was something that not only should we be pursuing, but we should certainly be working towards achieving. If not successful in the first go-round. So that was a very lengthy process and a very cumbersome application, but well worth it. That happened in April. We got word the very beginning of November, and the town of Southbury and our senior center was recognized on December 1st at the annual breakfast, and both Jeff and I were asked to speak, which was really kind of nice. We've lost our commission on our Department on Aging, so we lost our commissioner. I want to stress to all of the selectmen what that's going to mean for our senior population here in the town. We've lost our voice with the governor. We no longer have a senior representative at the table with our governor. As the director and municipal agent, that concerns me greatly. That was one of the reasons they kind of had to do a quick change at the breakfast and ask for some keynote speakers. So I spoke about some of the innovative approaches that we're taking to change things up a little bit for our seniors, and you'll see all that in my director's report next meeting. I won't bore you with that. I did come equipped with our certificate. I haven't hung it on the wall because I wanted to share it with all of you. The really pleasant surprise along with it, because every penny counts, is we got a check for $200 as well. And I will be working towards instituting a very robust and responsible volunteer program, and I've actually vocalized the deadline of March 1st to Jeff, and I will be aspiring to reach that self-imposed goal, and we'll use that $200 to go towards whatever we might need in implementing that structure. So I want to thank the WCAAA. A lot of people have been asking, what does this mean? It's going to give us a tremendous distinguishing leg up when it comes time to apply for grants. It also means that Southbury and the Southbury Senior Center will get incredible exposure both on the state and national level. WCAAA will be promoting us for the 3-year term of this distinguished recognition. So just a good thing to be happening. And just a quick plug, we're at 634 new senior memberships since January 1. Our growth is explosive. You'll be seeing a lot of that through the budget process and the things that I'm presenting. And our transportation continues to explode in growth. All good things. We're keeping the balls in the air, and we're very pleased to continue to serve our seniors in the best possible way that we can. And I want to thank all of you for your support.
Tam, what's the percentage of increase? I mean, 600 is the number. What did we have a year ago?
It's a good question, and it's actually one that I knew that question would come up. Part of our problem is that in the old computer system that we were using and in the lack of structure that existed within the department, we were actually carrying expired memberships for more than a year. So it's very difficult. I don't want to cushion or give false numbers. So I just want to say that 634 new since January. I will tell you that I know by the amount of activity and how many people deep were at the counter on a Tuesday or Thursday. It's significant. It's significant, but I wouldn't want to put a percentage to it because that would be I wouldn't be able to be fully accurate on that. Okay. I think that's important. I will have accurate numbers on increased ridership. One of the things with this new program and the incredible customer service and code writing that we get, I put in a request. One of the dynamics in our membership is you don't have to be a member to ride our transportation, and that's a big misnomer out there. I deal with that with seniors all the time. They're thrilled to hear that because sometimes $15 is a lot of money for people that are requiring the transportation. So I've gotten code written now that we can actually track how many new riders we get a month, because if we're tracking new membership, you're not going to get an accurate new rider. And I know that there have been percentages that were thrown out there prior to my arrival of the increase in ridership. I don't doubt that there was an increase in the past, but I'm not certain about the accuracy of that number. So I hope to be able to give you better numbers this year.
George, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I did have one question, but I didn't realize how big a deal the senior center was in Southbury until I got involved with this role, if you want to call it a role here. But man, I get comments from people all over about that they love the programs and they participate in the programs. I met one couple who they're there like 9 times a week. They go multiple times a day because they participate in so many programs. My question is, do we have an adequate sized facility for everything in the anticipated growth that?
We don't have an adequate sized facility now. Okay. That's the bottom line. I'm constantly over at Park and Rec. I'm very grateful for the partnership that I have with Dustin over at Park and Rec. We don't, and that's, you know, I've been in your seats also, so I know the dynamics of putting a statement out there like that. You know, let's hope that in the future that, you know, there might be some opportunities that will exist. We do our very best to juggle as much as we can. Certainly, you know, when I've run into this in meetings with Jeff, we have to make sure that there's a certain amount of rotating vacancies of rooms, or we end up with the same stagnant programming all the time. I have to say that I'm blessed, and this town is blessed with an incredible, incredible senior team. And they don't like to see failures happen, and I got to be honest with you, I've said it to Jeff over and over again. They're happening, and despite best efforts, they're happening just because the growth is far outpacing our resources and our manpower. But we continue to do best we can, and the best we can. I think it's a fantastic facility. I'm grateful to have what we have, so I don't want to come across the wrong way. It's a magnificent facility, and I'll tell you, we hear it all the time. We hear it from vendors, we hear it from people that come from other centers. Our new senior center, well, she's not new anymore, she'll be celebrating her year anniversary, but Katrina Anderson, who goes by Kathy, has been a fantastic addition to an already incredible team. So our drivers are amazing. I will tell you that the need and the need is really incredible. I will tell you that I made 3 calls to Protective Services this week. It's been a very upsetting week, and I've dealt with 2 families who I've had to tell them that their loved one has failed enough that they can't come or travel without an aid. So you look, we're all getting older, right? I mean, it's a process we can't stop, but it seems like it's a fast pace now, you know, faster than ever. I guess.
Seems to accelerate.
But at the same time, we continue to have a very vibrant, you know, an active senior population. We average about a 1,300 or 1,400 1,300 to 1,400 attendees just to our exercise programs. If I could run just exercise programs, we would be chock full every month. So,
Jennifer has a question.
Have we gotten any feedback from the state regarding the 621 individuals?
The MSP cuts. So we have been, I will tell you that my phone and front counter has been flooded, and I think the most frustrating thing for me is I can't give these people answers. I don't know how many of you noticed that per the Senior Commission's request, I wrote a letter to the editor in Voices because Voices couldn't get a story out fast enough to address the issue. Thankfully, I will tell you that my colleagues throughout the state are encouraging seniors to call their legislators. There is a current movement underway, which may not even have to come to great lengths because it sounds like we finally have Hartford listening, but it's an actual effort for seniors to send their prescription bags, not their pill bottles because it has their personal information on it, but bags with Stop MSP labels on it and flood their legislators' offices with it. So there's a lot of angry people. My colleagues and I are just, we're absolutely, we don't know what to do. And the seniors are coming to us, they're angry, they're upset, and they are scared straight. But the good news was the deadline of January 1st has been extended 2 months, but that's all we've been told. An initial round of letters went to our seniors that stated that this change was coming, and they were in, there's the possibility they were going to lose their benefits, and that was happening January 1st. They got that letter 2 weeks ago. And now there's supposedly a more specific letter going out to each senior. They're supposed to be releasing those letters December 19th so that each individual will hear how that is going to affect them specifically. But beyond that, I have nothing. I have absolutely nothing. We just got word yesterday about the fact that the deadline had been extended 2 months. We've also been told, as I'm aware of it at this current time, is that the prescription coverage will go through 2018. But, again, still there's a lot of unanswered questions. And I think, in all fairness, up in Hartford, they've got to figure it out also. I think this was passed and they didn't realize the impact that this was going to have, and there was no, from where I'm sitting and my colleagues are sitting, there was no thought to the implementation of it. It was just really yanked really yanked the rug out from underneath our seniors. And there are 621 in Southbury, but there's over 68,000 in the state that are being affected by this.
So if it does proceed as it looks like it may, can we count on a recommendation perhaps from you and the commission, the Elderly Commission, on how the town can help those individuals? Because
Jennifer, we will within the best of our abilities. And I'm going to be, and I'll give you some of my hesitation is, I'm Choices certified. I went through that whole certification. Unfortunately, I'm so busy. I haven't had enough hands-on to start to get comfortable with that. I mean, you could be a full-time Choices certified counselor. We're blessed with a great Choices counselor in Paul Hinckley. In fact, he was recognized at the breakfast for giving hundreds of hours worth of time just to Southbury seniors. Here's the problem. They rolled this out in the middle of open enrollment. Open enrollment from October to December is crazy because this is when the one opportunity and open window that the seniors have to be able to change up their coverage, figure out where they're at, have medications changed, have their needs changed. So the Choices counselors were already spoken for and booked solid when this all hit. So you really need to have someone who's very, very familiar, and that's one of the things all the area agencies on aging, because of course ours is only one of several in the state, they're trying to figure out how do you get the help that these people are going to need to be able to adjust and figure out what they're going to do. So we will make a recommendation the best that we can. It might require somebody who's got a lot more hands-on experience.
I was going to bring this up at the commission meeting next week, right? Wednesday we meet?
Yes.
But if there is something that we can do, maybe pooling with those other towns that are affected, you said 68,000 people.
That's just seniors. That doesn't include disabled.
But maybe we could pool together with other senior centers or something, maybe something more collaborative we could do.
Bring that up.
Definitely.
I got to figure that out yet.
Okay.
I've looked at my schedule and what's going on. All right?
Yep.
Thank
Anybody
you
else?
so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Len, Pompano River Watershed Coalition?
He's leaving. Hi. He's out of here.
Good evening, Board of Selectmen, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. My name is Len DeYoung, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Pompano River Watershed Coalition. Joining me this evening are two of our board members, Vincent McDermott, who's our chair, and Gail McTaggart, who is our vice chairman. And if I've done this correctly, I've got about a 15-minute presentation. We'll update you on our accomplishments and significant activities with your support here in Southbury, and we'll get right into it. The overview includes for tonight a brief look at our current state of water resources. I'll talk about the coming shortly to a close planning for the state water plan. More close to home, we're doing our own watershed-based plan. We have an in-stream flow analysis being conducted with the Heritage Village Water Company that you all were instrumental in terms of driving, and I'll talk more about that. Briefly about a review of our programs and outreach, and then we'll have time for some questions and answers. So just as a brief reminder, this is the Pomperog watershed. It's a 90-square-mile watershed. We have 7 regional basins. You see them colored here. The most significant regional basins would be starting north to south, the Wikipimi, the Nanawag, and then into the Pomperog and then the other basins. We touch 8 communities, most significantly Bethlehem, Woodbury, and Southbury, although we also include Oxford as part of our community. Although they're not in our watershed, as you all know, they do receive water supply from the Heritage Village Water Company. The diagram to the left is the state, and one of the reasons we are such a science-based and well-researched is this is the Pomperog Basin here. This is the geology in the Pomperog. This is the geology in the Connecticut River Basin. Back in the mid-1800s, USGS started to study this basin, learned a lot about geology in this basin, and applied it to the Connecticut River Basin because of the similarities in geology. So back when I was here in October and I wasn't able to present, this was the slide, and this is where we were in terms of the U.S. Drought Monitor. You can see we had moved into a normally dry condition. I left this slide in here to compare where we are today. You can see we are no longer facing a drought. Even after the significant rains we had back in the fall of last year to correct the nearly 2-year drought, we were still, back in October, had moved into an abnormally dry period. But as it always works out, all I have to do is prepare a presentation on drought and water conservation, and it rains. So we had 2 major rain events, and the good news is we are no longer in a drought. Thought you'd be interested in seeing a river flow. This is the stream gauge, the USGS stream gauge at Ewald Park on the Pomperog River. This line here, it's a little difficult to see, but this line here is the mean or the average flow. And if you look at the x-axis, we're into early October, and it takes us out pretty close to where we are today. And you can see how low the flow was, and then we had the 2 rain events, this initial rain event, and then you'll recall the 5-6-inch rain event that brought the flows up to about 2,000 cubic feet per second. 3,000 cubic feet per second is actually flood stage for this particular part of the river. So you can see how close we got to some flood stage. You can also see how quickly it's back down again and is now below the norm. And this speaks very true to what we're hearing the experts say about climate change. We're going to see, as you saw from the previous slide, we have we are not in a drought, but we've actually have a ½ an inch more than normal rainfall, but yet our rivers are flowing low because the rain is concentrated in one particular period of time. And you will see, we kind of see these flash rains, and now we're also a new term that just has come up, and that's flash droughts. And again, it's all indicative of climate change. To the right is the USGS groundwater gauge, which is over on Buck Hill Road. And you can see, again, back into the drought period. In this case, the diamonds are where you would expect it would be over the life of this gauge, which is, I believe, about 30 years. You can see how low we had gotten as a result of the earlier drought. This is in the till and not in the stratified drift, so it takes a little while longer to recover, but it was recovering very nicely, and it was kind of functioning as it should be. And then we started getting into that drought period that I mentioned before. We've gotten a little bit more rain, so it's starting to recover, but it's starting to taper off again a little bit, so we're going to need to be mindful of that. So this is the type of things that you'll find on our website, real time. This is the Pomperog gauge. For those interested in further north, we have gauges on the Wikipimi as well as the Nanawag. The next item on our agenda for this evening is the state water plan. As you know, we have been working closely now at about 2 years on Connecticut's first state water plan. Very exciting, very nice opportunity to export information, science, and data that we've developed here for the Pomperaug Basin into a state process, have that information utilized with the hopes that we'll have a state water plan that will resolve some longstanding issues for not just in the Pomperaug, but throughout the state. It's being overseen by the Water Planning Council. You see the representation below. The Water Planning Council is OPM, Department of Health, PURA, and DEEP. It's a plan that was initiated by the passing of Public Act 14163. It's to be submitted to the state legislature in less than a month, in January of next year. And the plan is intended to help planners, regulators, and lawmakers make decisions about Connecticut's water, and it's consistent throughout the state. Lots of talented people all over the state have been working on this plan over the last, again, nearly close to 2 years. Our participation has been, I represent the region as a member of the advisory group, the 20-member advisory group to the Water Planning Council. We've also been a participant on the Science and Technical Committee, again, using the data that we've developed locally and exporting it into the plan. And we've participated in numerous workshops and public meetings, including 2 public meetings that, through your goodwill, were held right here in Southbury. Key highlights of the state plan: platform for consistent, informed decision-making, maintain the highest quality drinking water, balance in-stream and out-of-stream needs. That I should probably explain that briefly. In-stream needs would include needs such as aquatic protection, the amount of flow in the river that is required for a healthy stream, a healthy river. Out-of-stream needs would be a good example. That would be public water supply needs, the amount of water that's needed to maintain public health and adequate public water supply. The other highlights include water conservation and maintaining scientific data. What's in the draft plan? Well, there's background information on current policies and future options. There's lots of technical information, including water needs, information on climate change, as well as water conservations. And then there's recommendations. There's policies that the various groups working on this committee have agreed to and we can focus on. And then there are other policies that we know we want to get there, but we quite haven't figured out yet. So there are pathways forward to those. And then there's an implementation strategy on, once this plan is approved, how we make it all work. The plan is developed around the 44 regional basins in the state, and the Pomperaug being one of them. You can see them here, and then you can see the outlines of all the others. It was a decision point early in development of the plan whether we use the 8 major basins, the 44 regional basins, or the 363 sub-regional basins. 8 major basins, too large of a scale, 363, too small of a scale for us to be able to deliver this plan in the 2 years we had. So we went with the 44 sub-basins, and again, one of them being the Pomperaug. This is a tome of a document. It's about 650 pages long. It's easy reading. In that document are technical information and basin summaries, and this happens to be the one for the Pomperaug. This is a tool. This is an analysis of water in and water out of the basin, and it warrants just a few minutes to spend a little time on this. Again, here's the basin. I won't go through all this, but this is the modeling analysis of water in, water out, and then these are the results. And you can see the results for average conditions, July conditions. Let me do average conditions first. This is water in the basin, so this is how much water we have to work with. The green here indicates the water that's being taken out of the basin from groundwater supplies, supplies for agriculture, supplies for public water supply. This hashed area here is the aquatic health need, or the in-stream flow need, in order to maintain a healthy stream and a healthy river. These hash heres are different variations of unused diversions, and diversions are a right to take water. So these are not currently being used. They may be used in the future, they may not be used, and that's one of the topics, and I'll mention that again shortly in terms of a policy going forward. So you can see that on an average condition, that the basin is a healthy basin in terms of where we currently are on an average condition. You get into July conditions and things get a little bit more difficult in terms of again, same type of, in this case, these hashings are different types of flows for aquatic protection, because we're into what are called bioperiods, and we're into a particular bioperiod here, so the representation is a little different than it is here, but it essentially means the same thing. These two hashings mean this is what the rivers require to protect the aquatic health. Here's the issue, is water in the basin during the extreme conditions. It's a little difficult to read. You can see this is what's in the basin during the extreme condition, this is what's taken out during the extreme condition, and then this is what's required for aquatic protection. So you can see during extreme periods, we have the need to be very cautious in terms of what we're doing with our water resources. And again, these are the unused. So this is all part of a planning tool. We have to be careful how we use this. There's still a need for additional data, additional updates. The scale isn't just quite right, but it is a good tool. It's the first time we've ever had all this information collected in one point for all 44 basins across the state. We submitted our comments, as did 185 other people, and comments are being currently reviewed. Our comments, and I left copies, hard copies of our comments. They're also on our website if the board's interested, or members of the audience on the side table here. Our comments basically were supportive of the plan, but we cautioned folks again on what I just said, the use of basin data and scale. We had to use the 44 regional basins. We have to be careful about scale. We know that parts of the Pomperaug can be in good condition, whereas parts of the Wekapimi or the Nanawaug upstream may not be. So that we're starting to look at very specific conditions, we have to make sure we're cautious about what we're analyzing. We cautioned the regulators relevant to stream flow measurement, USGS. We're very blessed. We've got 3 USGS stream flow gauges in the basin. Funding for stream flow gauges is threatened. If we lose the stream flow measurements forward, we no longer have good data or good input. So we underscored how important it was to continue to find a funding mechanism throughout the state for the stream flow gauges. We have a concern that groundwater withdrawal is not part of the stream flow regulations. Surface water withdrawal is, groundwater withdrawal is not. We'd like to see groundwater withdrawal become part of the stream flow regulations going forward. We have a concern relevant to registered diversions. As I mentioned before, diversion is your right to take water from an aquifer or from a surface water. In 1982, you could grandfather your diversion in terms of how much water you could take. So there are registered diversions out there. That water has never been used. It may be used, it may not be used in the future. We need to be more focused in terms of determining exactly how much water we have available. The other issue relevant to registered diversions is that they're not environmentally and science-based. The other type of diversion is a permitted diversion. It goes through a very lengthy and very technical review relevant to all kinds of issues, including environmental issues. So what we'd like to see at some point is we'd like to see registered diversions looked at specifically for environmental concerns, just like the permitted diversions are now. We underscored the opportunities with water reuse and Class B water. A perfect example is the Tawantik plant in Oxford, and the opportunity then is we voiced our concern then that we could have used water reuse and Class B water instead of public water supply for that facility. We had a concern relevant to private wells. There's lots of good information in the plan about private wells, but we don't believe it's given the priority that it needs to be given. And we also have a concern about plan implementation. We think it's moving too slowly, so we've encouraged the Water Planning Council to make that happen more quicker. With that being said, we said with consideration for the above, PRWC strongly supports the plan. Next topic is our watershed-based plan. It was funded by a 319 EPA grant, as well as the Connecticut Community Foundation provided a supplemental funding. The focus is on the lower Pomperaug River and the Wekapimi River with documented impairments due to elevated bacteria. The primary goal is to identify projects and actions to reduce bacteria levels. And once we complete this plan, we are then eligible for additional EPA funding because it will be compliant with 9 elements of a watershed-based plan. The approach we're taking is we're using a land use committee with representative of key stakeholders, including a number of key people here in Southbury, including Dolores Curtis from your planning group, as well as others. We have a consulting support, Fuss & O'Neill, and it will go through a community outreach process. This is a work in progress right now. Water quality impairments, a little difficult to see on this map, but these are the 2 primary areas we're focusing in as the Wekapimi and then 2 stretches on the Pomperaug. The reason this is as red as it is and as long as it is the results for the impairment comes from one test point here from DEEP. Our feeling is that if DEP had more test points here, we wouldn't see a continuous impairment line up and down the river here. But because there's only one test point, the way DEP grades this is to grade the entire river. Whereas we have multiple test points on the Pomperog, and the Pomperog generally scored high, but we've got a few pocket areas where there's some coliform impediments. So it's updated to show supporting unassessed water, and it's an ambient water quality monitoring locations need to be added. That's a part of our recommendations. The Land Use Committee, the LUC, identified roughly 60 sites where we thought there may be contributions that is causing these impairments. Those contributions could be from urban runoff, agricultural land, manure management, septic system, point discharges, waterfowl, pet waste, and stream flow erosion. So those, you can't read them here, but those are the sites that we've identified. What we have found so far, again, this is a work in progress, is that the stormwater runoff from developed land is the primary source here in Southbury for bacteria in the Pomperog subbasin. A little further north up on the Wikipimi, we believe agricultural land use and non-point source is the dominant source of bacteria pollution. And then there are other pollutant loadants. Efforts to control this, well, what do? We are, a part of this is to identify low-impact development techniques such as rain gardens and impervious services and other things that can do to help correct this issue. Ongoing and new related efforts to the MS4 compliance program, as well as public outreach, and then, as I've already said, additional water quality monitoring to assess the stream segments that we really don't, we have too broad of an assumption on. The next topic is, and you'll recognize this is the agreement that the board worked so closely on and so thoroughly on. This is part of the Heritage Village Water Company acquisition agreement, and the agreement dates back to December 2016, and it says, specific to the topic I'm about to talk about, is within 6 months of when the Heritage Village Water Company and Connecticut Water Systems are operationally interconnected under Connecticut Water Company ownership, HVWC and Connecticut Water shall initiate a study to study system operations and develop operating procedures designed to mitigate impacts of the Heritage Village Water Company well operation and improve stream flows in the Pomperog River. This is your doing. This is what you did for us, and we really appreciate that. And, it's an ongoing process, and it's a good one. Project participants include Jeff and Cindy from the First Selectmen's office, the Land Use Department, representatives from Heritage Village Water, Connecticut Water. The consultant hired by Connecticut Water is Malone and McBroom, and of course we're at the table. There are 3 tasks associated with it, where task 3 is actually the meeting, so there's really 2 core tasks. The first one is to review a document that we did in 2007 with the University of Massachusetts and Connecticut DEP, which essentially set up critical flows in order to maintain aquatic health in the river. We'd have to agree on the goal for that task 1 is to revise it and agree upon revised operational thresholds. The second task is, once we get to task 1, is then to take those thresholds, use them as a base to determine what are our operating procedures in order to make certain that we can work towards protecting those critical stream flows. And again, the third task is just a series of meetings. Here's where we're at. Project status, 2 meetings have been held. Again, Jeff and Cindy have been participating in them. A draft memorandum for task number 1 is under review. PRWC Science Committee met on October 26th to review task 1. I can tell you that we made a few changes, but it's met our satisfaction. So now we're going to move on to focus number 2. We have made some revisions to the 2007 report. We now have our critical flows identified, and now we can move on to, well, what are we going to do about that? And just to kind of quickly say, well, what can you do about it? Now we're talking about things such as drought triggers, water conservation, the use of interconnects in order to rely less on the water resources being taken out of the aquifer, and then thereby allowing more flow and more aquatic health protection. I'm wrapping up. I just have a few slides. This is our, we're very proud. This is our first year of our Youth Conservation Corps. Here you can see the team. This is the high school. We have a high school program and a college program. The college program is the Dr. Mark Taylor internship program, and this year we've combined it with the youth corps conservations at the high school level. These are our high school and interns and some staff. They're over here at Cedarland Park. You're familiar with the work that we've done at Cedarland Park. They're pulling invasive species along the brook that runs through Cedarland Park. This is our 2007 Mark Taylor intern. The PRWC is actually the glue on the back of the label that goes on the storm drain markers. And you can see the kids here working hard doing invasive invasive control throughout the watershed. We participate in outreach and stream monitoring. This is the Southbury Farmers Market. We're very happy to be there on a regular basis to talk about what we do. You can see our first Mark Taylor intern here doing some marking of the storm drains, and then a future Mark Taylor intern here doing some marking of the storm drains. These are our macroinvertebrate studies. We're actually out at various points along the rivers looking at the critters and looking at the health of the critters and reporting that information to DEEP, and DEP rolls that up into a broader water quality report. This is a sign indicating our thermal monitoring. We have temperature probes all up and down the river. Again, we take that information, send it to DEP, and it becomes part of the big picture in terms of just how healthy the river is. So you can see that. We have been working closely for many years now on the municipal stormwater permit support through the River Smart. River Smart is a collaborative effort with a number of conservation-minded like organizations, Housatonic Valley Association, Pomperaug River Watershed Coalition, and others. It offers an educational component which helps your compliance with the MS4 program. So we've been continuing to do that, and we'll continue to do that. It's kind of been a win-win for us, and we'd like to think so, helpful to you. This is now flipping back to the watershed-based plan. Low-impact development is a rain garden project. This is a proposed rain garden project for Community House Park. It's the concept view. We have a grant application in for this. If awarded that grant application, we plan to put this demonstration rain garden in place. We reviewed that with your Parks and Rec folks, and they strongly support it. Here's an article that was in a newspaper not too long ago supporting us. So that's just one example of a number of things that we're continuing to do. This is my closing slide. It's a thank you. It's a thank you not only for listening to me and us this evening, but it's also a thank you for all that you do for PRWC. I'm going to turn the mic over just briefly to Vince, who wants to say a few things. Before I do that, I note on your agenda that you have the next topic is the fracking waste. We don't claim to be fracking waste experts. In fact, the lady who's going to be presenting to you, I've heard her presentation, has been very helpful to us in learning more about fracking waste. Should the board decide that it's going to move forward and study fracking waste, and should you decide to do it in a work group fashion, then I would offer you PRWC participation in that. Would you like, if you'd like to have us there? So have Vince say a few remarks, and then we'll both open it up to questions.
Very few remarks, and it's really to thank you. I've been on the board for about 13 years. Mark Taylor invited me, and it's been a pleasure. But the support, not only financial, but the moral support that you give us by inviting us to be your partners, and our contribution to the welfare of our region, and particularly the town of Southbury, is very gratifying as a board member to see our work being implemented. So thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
So if I may, Len, I kind of want to say it's a little embarrassing that you put my office at the top of that list. I would have to say that PRWC should be at the top of the list because, quite frankly, I rely on your organization. There's a lot of data here that, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a fish out of water when it comes to to that. And I appreciate the work that you do. And I've spoken with other partners who depend on our aquifer water that to explain the importance of this aquifer, not just to us because we live here, but because of the water usage that they benefit from and becoming partners with the PRWC. So I want to thank you. It was nice of you to put me at the top, but the work you've been doing for our municipality and our community is great, and it's really nice. So if anybody else had any questions.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. It was very thoughtful. Appreciate it.
Just very quick
Go ahead,
one.
Mike.
I echo everything you say, and most of you know I work for a community improvement environmental nonprofit, so Pomp River Watershed Coalition is, I'm a huge fan. I do have one question specific to the work you're doing in partnership with CWC and Heritage Village Water. And I'm wondering if there's one other task that is being considered or is just assumed, and that is there a point you measure the effectiveness of the operational procedures that you ultimately put in place to ensure that those are the right, because you do your homework,
Yep.
you develop procedures, but is there a monitoring process in place to say these are the right ones?
Yeah, great question, Mike. Yes, there will be, and I should have mentioned that earlier. We're setting, I mentioned we have flow requirements now that the group has agreed upon. So one way of measuring is to see if what we're doing with Heritage Village meets those flow requirements, makes any difference to those flow requirements. Another way of measuring is related to the macroinvertebrate studies to see if we see improvements in aquatic health. Some of it's as simple as just visual inspections in terms of whether there's improvement from one year to another in terms of the river health. So there are ways to kind of box around whether we've met some of our goals.
Any other questions?
Hi, George.
What is your take on the overall health plan of the system? I mean, you've been watching it now for a number of years. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? I mean, is there even a measure you could apply to that makes any sense?
Yeah, overall, George, the system the entire region continues to be, entire watershed continues to be rather a very healthy watershed. It's identified as a very healthy watershed in a number of reports. We do have pockets, as I mentioned, as part of the study in the watershed-based plan that requires some attention. I don't have specific data to compare those pockets from one year because this watershed-based plan is the start of that process.
Are you talking about the bacterial?
The E. coli loading, the bacterial loading. So.
One other question, and that's, are you taking any measures to monitor the chlorides and the sodium in the water? I mean, we're starting to use a lot more salt. I don't know about.
We're using less salt, George.
Well, you're right. Okay, you got me on.
Brian?
Brian? Compared to 10
That's what I've been
years
working
ago,
on.
we're using a lot more salt than we were then. We hardly
Yeah.
use any. So I'm just wondering if that's part of your.
It's not part of current activity by PRWC. Vince, do you know if the state has a program on that? On a broader?
The State Department of Transportation conducting studies on the use of their road de-icing measurements, but I'm not aware of any specific study to those, the chlorides.
It's been a problem in a lot of areas. I mean, New Hampshire has put a lot of restrictions.
And that's the direction that the state is going toward, and you can see it by the nature of their materials. You have a gray car now instead of a sandy car. In wintertime,
So I think we can, for the purpose of time, I think we can, George, we can put your.
I didn't want to say anymore.
No, we can put our comments to Len. He's always been responsive in that matter, and there's no reason why, we can't find out what's going on, or if there's something going, if they're looking at it or whatever, and we can, I mean, for the purpose of tonight, I think we can do that.
Again, I want to thank you. I also want to thank Noreen and Betsy because they're always so very helpful in terms of
They're the
helping us
best.
do this kind of stuff. So thank you all for the time this evening.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Len.
Don, we can't, are you with, we can't, if it's not part of the presentation, send me an email, send Len an email questioning, asking him questions, because we really can't start getting the public in on our presentations, and I apologize for that. So certainly get to it. Next up is the fracking ordinance. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Jennifer Siskind. I'm a local coordinator with Food and Water Watch. This is a volunteer position. I don't get paid, so I don't have any skin in the game in what I'm about to tell you, but I have been working for over 4 years trying to protect Connecticut from having this waste trucked into our state. This map shows in and around Pennsylvania where all waste is being disposed of. All the yellow flags that you see there are disposal sites. But Pennsylvania is producing so much waste that it's being shipped out to other states, at least 8 at the last count that I've saw a couple years ago. And we currently have a state law that mandates that DEEP write regulations which would allow this waste to then be handled at hazardous waste treatment facilities here in Connecticut. That will require storage facilities, tank farms, transfer sites, and the method in bringing this waste into the state would be tanker truck, and they would be driving right through Southbury on I-84, mostly from the state of Pennsylvania. And we have 3 hazmat facilities in Connecticut that could take the raw, untreated waste. But then there's also concern about beneficial use permits that DEEP might decide to give out on partially treated waste. And there's also a lot of waste that currently are not covered in our temporary moratorium. This slide comes from the National Council on Radiation Protection, and it was a report specifically to warn the public about exposure to radioactivity in fracking waste. And the problem is the, oops, I'm sorry, I just turned this off. Pointer, there you go. The problem is with horizontal hydraulic fracturing, you're having a much greater exposure to this Marcellus shale formation, where they're harvesting the gas from. And that's one of the most radioactive shale deposits in the country. This shale deposit also carries a wealth of other types of toxins in it that are naturally occurring. And the radioactive material and the other toxins can travel through the air, and the human body can be exposed in a number of ways. It can also contaminate soil and run off into surface waters and leach down through the ground into groundwaters. And this slide comes to us from the U.S. Geological Survey, which is a branch of our federal government. And all of these little shapes and colors are individual wells that were tested for their radium content, the radioactivity content. And you can see in the added notes that I've put in, 5 picocuries is considered safe in drinking water, but this waste is as high as 26,600 picocuries per liter. So it's significantly radioactive, and we know that radium causes breast cancer, bone cancer, liver cancer, and is associated with leukemias. The radium-226 has a half-life of 1,600 years. The total radioactive material will take about 4,000 years to decompose completely. That's, I think, about 80 generations. And I mentioned there are other naturally occurring toxins in the shale deposit. This is just a partial list of the ones that can commonly be found and their impacts to the human body. This infographic basically describes a study that was released in 2011. Dr. Theo Colburn was the first person to look at all the nationwide state databases to find out what the drillers were reporting as voluntarily, what chemicals they were using during the fracturing process. She found 649 known chemicals, but a little bit more than half of them she was able to research further and find out what they do to the human body. 44% of them had never been studied by any medical experts to know whether they cause cancer or liver failure or neurological disorders. But you know, soluble in water is self-explanatory. Volatile basically means that these chemicals can vaporize and then move through the air, similar to that earlier slide that you saw, where if these chemicals are moving through the air, we can inhale them. They can deposit on crops and backyard you know, structures and that sort of thing. But since that study in 2011, Yale has come out with 2 additional studies, and the latest one shows that 1,157 chemicals are being voluntarily reported. They've studied specifically which ones cause short-acting cancers, lymphomas and leukemias. We've found that people are being hospitalized at a much higher rate where they're being exposed to these chemicals due to drilling or due to waste sites. And they're being hospitalized for the same things that we know the chemicals in this waste can cause. So you don't have to connect the dots very far to know that this waste is a health hazard to the public. Many spills have been occurring. Duke has done numerous studies. The third one that I have listed here, more than 3,000 spills in only 4 states are due to just moving and transferring this waste around. And we're currently fracking in about 26 states. These are the different types of wastes that come out of these wells. Up here you have the drill cuttings. These are solid wastes when they're drilling the well, drilling the hole in the ground to create the well. They're coated with chemicals that are used for the drilling process and the toxins that are buried in the ground. Over here you see the flowback waste. This is the immediate flow back up to the surface after they inject these wells at very high pressure with a chemical solution. And then during the production phase, when gas is coming out of these wells and when oil is coming out of these wells, it's carrying with it a naturally occurring brine that exists in the ground. These shale deposits 350 million years ago were ancient seabeds. So, you know, the organic material has been compressed and turned into shale, and fossil fuels have developed, but that ancient seawater is still there. And it's 8 times saltier than normal seawater of today. You were mentioning chlorides. The chloride levels are through the roof in this brine. I don't know the exact measurements, but I saw something on FOIA requests that Riverkeeper in New York had done, and I think it was over 200,000. I don't know how that compares, and I don't know what part per whatever it is. These liquids are then partially filtered and reused over and over again until they're just too contaminated to continue to use, and that's when they're sent off for final disposal, which is what tanker trucks would be filled with if they were coming into Connecticut once regulations are finalized. These are the EPA violations of the 3 facilities that exist currently in Connecticut. These are privately owned for-profit facilities, and you can see that they have significant, if not all or most of the past 3 years in violation, and significant violations are when they have discharged levels of toxins far exceeding what they are allowed to under regulation. A little bit more information. I'm not intending for you to read all this fine print, but you can find all this information at Rivers Alliance website, and all these blue links you can go in and click and drill down even further and get more information. Meriden, Bridgeport. Typically the response from DEEP has been no further action at this time. I'm assuming that is due to the fact that their staffing levels have been decimated over the past number of years, and their budget is sorely in need of improvement. So this is the potential chain of contamination that can occur in Connecticut. We are already seeing contamination occurring due to these issues and these issues in other states. When you're putting literally tens of thousands of tanker trucks on roadways to carry billions of gallons of liquid waste produced in one state in a single year, significantly speaking, you're just having a lot more roadway accidents. Tankers are rupturing, there's immediate runoff. Southbury could be impacted by runoff that occurs off the highway. It would be your first responders who would have to get there before a hazmat team gets there, and they would be exposed to chemicals traveling through the air. And then the hazardous waste treatment facilities, depending on future DEEP regulations, they could partially clean this waste, but still send contaminated effluent on to publicly owned treatment works in other towns. They would not be equipped to handle the toxins that they're not supposed to get in the first place, but unfortunately, the horse is out of the barn door before it's discovered that they've received it. So contamination is inevitable when the hazardous waste treatment facilities do not properly clean what they're supposed to. And then we're concerned that any sludge from these facilities might then be sent to trash to energy incinerators. Radium is inert, which means you can heat it to 700 degrees Fahrenheit in these incinerators and the radioactivity does not change. So you risk radioactive emissions through the air, and also the ash that needs to be cleaned out is just as radioactive. And then these beneficial use permits down here at the bottom have already been issued in other states, not in every state, in a limited selection. And currently those solids, those drill cuttings that I showed you on the top left in the picture of the different types of wastes, those solids are part of the loopholes in our current state moratorium. And that's why I've been working for the past 3 years to warn towns and have them pass local bans, because any contractor could be bringing in construction fill that's mixed with this contaminated waste. Some states are allowing capping for brownfields, capping on landfills, used as base material underneath the asphalt when building new roads. And some states are allowing the brines to be spread on roadways and also to be spread on unpaved areas to tamper dust. This is the difference between the language that we're recommending that towns adopt and what this current state language is. This language was written by the Riverkeeper Association or organization. It's a nonprofit that was founded by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And their model language has already passed by several county legislatures in New York State. And what we did was we took that language and then edited out all the references to state statute. And then actually I need to update this slide, I'm sorry. We are now up to 33 towns that have passed. And 32 of the 33 have used the Riverkeeper model language, which is what I'm recommending to Southbury. Washington was the very first town to pass a ban. The Washington Environmental Council spearheaded that, and I don't think that they were aware of all the loopholes in the state moratorium when they took that action. This is what it looks like in New York State. There are a lot of individual towns and municipalities and cities that passed either bans or moratoriums, and then the counties started getting involved, where you see this overlay of lighter red. Those are specific county legislative bans. And then here we have New York City. All 5 boroughs are covered. State of Vermont has a ban on both drilling and handling of waste. And this is what Connecticut looks like now. We're now up to 33 towns that have passed. Rocky Hill just passed on Monday night. And we've got numerous others that are currently in the works. New Haven, there's a lot of support. It's already gone to public hearing. Reading, there's a petition initiative, and those petitions are ready to be turned in. And we've got other towns where we have numerous either boards of selectmen or town councils that are currently championing this and moving it forward through the process. So I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
So this was brought to me by Tom Kreider earlier, and we were a little busy the last couple of months about this, and I said I would be happy to have you come. I'm sorry it has to be so many presentations at one time, but we have to get back up and get geared up again. So is there any questions about this from the board?
I would not ask a question. I would simply say it was very powerful to have the 2 presentations back to back, actually.
Wasn't by design, I swear. Wasn't by
It
design.
was very powerful.
So they asked to consider a fracking ordinance, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked into this a lot, except that, you know, when I looked at if there's the magnitude of damage that could be done by this fracking material, we can do an ordinance, and if an ordinance is there and it's $1,000 fine, that's minimal compared to what that impact would be if there was a problem, quite frankly. So I think, no disrespect, but it's almost more of a symbolic type of a situation, and to the town and to the state and how we feel. You're looking, I'm like, well, if you wanted to send your fracking material here, why don't you take our nuclear waste that we're producing at our power plants, over there. So I told her, and I think, George, you've looked into this a little bit? Have you?
Well, I learned a lot more here today than what I.
Okay, I didn't know if you had.
I don't have a, we don't benefit from fracking in the state. Economically, I mean, we get lower energy prices, I guess, because other states can make gas and give us energy at lower prices, I guess, but I would just as soon not see the stuff here. You make a good point that, $1,000 fine isn't gonna necessarily stop somebody, but I'd be in favor of it myself. I think, it sends a message, and I don't want that stuff in Southbury. What would you want? Why would anybody want it here? Is my question.
Yeah, and I'd agree with George, and I'd very strongly disagree with positioning it as just symbolic, regardless of what that fine might be. I think that if you look at this map and more of these communities go red, and I don't mean that politically, or orange, I'm not sure if it's red. Let's go with orange. Let's go with orange. But more of them turn orange. That's more than just symbolic. If community by community we begin to deliver a message to the industry and to other states that your fracking waste is not welcome here, well, that $1,000 fine becomes a lot more impactful. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a $1,000 fine. That's a number, and I haven't seen the ordinance. I'm very, very familiar with Riverkeeper Alliance, and I'm far less familiar with the issue of fracking, though I've been reading on it a lot. And I was actually contacted earlier in the year by, I believe, one of the local Southbury citizens who oh, is he here? Oh, there you are. Oh, there he is. Who I am, I'm glad I didn't see you in the back. Who I'm really glad has continued to push this forward. I would urge us to explore this, to put the ordinance in front of this board for review and for deliberation.
If I could just respond to a couple of the comments. Unfortunately, state statute limits towns to $250 as a maximum fine for an ordinance, which I agree with you is paltry as far as a penalty is concerned.
We had one accident on 84,
yeah,
it's more than $250.
Yeah. So, but there are other incidences where a town can, like if there's illegal dumping in your town, you can fine up to $10,000 and confiscate a truck. So, and then DEEP has the authority to fine hundreds of thousands of dollars if somebody has caused a situation that impacts public health. But the way that this would give Southbury control specifically is you're telling contractors that it's illegal. You would have a legal measure to take that somebody has violated a town law. You would also be able to restrict what's being spread on roads in your town, both public roads and private roads. You would also be able to restrict a property owner who might own in an industrially zoned area or an area next to the highway possibly, that down the road wants to convert their property to a transfer location. So that would mean trucks would be rolling off of 84, transferring into a tank farm, and then going back out to Pennsylvania to refill up. And then additional tanks would come rolling into Southbury, fill up, and then take it off to a hazardous waste treatment facility. So that's how you would have control and limit the amount of contamination that can occur in your town. My mother lives in central Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, fracking wells have moved closer and closer to her house. And about 2 weeks ago, there was a 63,000 gallon spill 2,500 feet away from her house. And that was caused by transferring waste from one tank to another tank. And it happened in the middle of the night because this is a 24-hour industry, and I don't know exactly what time it happened. I just know that PADEP was informed at 5 a.m. So it's believed that the operator fell asleep while he was in the process of pumping the waste from one tank to another. And that's the exact type of contamination that can occur in Connecticut once these regulations go through. And this particular slide that shows the difference between the ordinances and state law, there was an attempt last year. The House passed a ban, but the Senate did not call it for a vote, so it died. And what was moved forward in the House last year had all the same loopholes that you see in this column. And most legislators haven't taken the time to sit through this presentation. What they're being told by lobbyists from the oil and gas industry is woefully inadequate. They don't have any understanding about this waste, about the specific language that passed in 2014, unfortunately. And so we're hoping to support a better bill next year, but we have a very rancorous 2018 election season coming up. We've got one party trying to flip both the governorship and the Senate. We've got another party that's trying to hang on to it. And quite frankly, any bills that oppose the oil and gas industry get very little attention. So,
Well, what I think you're hearing here is a kind of a positive response. Jason, do you have something you'd like to?
Just looking at this chart here, so the current moratorium in effect only applies to those items where there's an X? Is that what you're saying?
that's correct.
So is this other stuff currently being hauled through the state?
We have no way to track that. We don't know.
But it can be.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
And any ordinance we pass is not going to apply to any state roads, right? How does that?
It would apply to a state road. Currently, there is no preemption issue because road spreading is part of the temporary ban or the temporary state moratorium. But if the state if these regulations go all the way through and we can't get it stopped with a state bill, and if the state decides that they want to spread on roads, any state roads through your town would then be preempted by state regulations. So
That's what I mean.
yeah.
Well, and I'm talking about not during the moratorium phase. I'm talking about after let's say the state passes regulations, they allow this waste to be transported through the state.
Yeah, unfortunately, no one can stop transport. So you can only stop the transfer, handling, physical actions of that waste. You can't tell tanker trucks that they're not allowed to roll down our roads because of federal interstate commerce laws. And there's nothing in the ordinance that we're suggesting that does prohibit any type of transportation.
So you're not talking about a truck driving down Main Street. You're talking about.
You can't stop that truck.
You can't stop that truck.
Okay.
But if that truck is leaking as it's driving through, as I've seen in my mother's neighborhood, because they're either not maintaining their trucks properly and these caustic chemicals are damaging the valve systems, if that truck is leaking, then they're breaking the law in your town and you have a legal action that you can take. So. The language in the local ordinances is much more specific. It talks about all types of oil and gas drilling and extraction activity and a certain type of storage of underground, a large cavernous underground gas storage and some liquid petroleum gas. The language in the state moratorium and the House bill that passed last year only talks about the hydraulic fracturing process or any waste that is derived secondarily to the purpose of that particular process. The problem is there's the drilling process that provides all those cuttings, there's the hydraulic fracturing process, there's the production process, there's the storage process, and that only one process is defined in the state law, and this is what our legislators are not aware of. Unfortunately, the Office of Legislative Research summaries that have been given to them don't explain that there are other processes that are loopholes. And an OLR report that was written in 2014 incorrectly told legislators that DEEP can just decide to ban this waste when they write their regulations. That is patently false. The only thing DEEP has the discretion to ban is what gets spread on roads and used as a de-icer or as a dust control. But they also have the discretion to approve that and allow beneficial use permits for that type of spreading. It's going to be up to them when they finalize their regulations.
Do you have like a model ordinance that you're promoting?
We do. It was written by Riverkeeper in New York State. It's been passed by 32 other towns. We have specific language. I think it's already been forwarded to you. If not, I can send it to you tomorrow. You know, it's excellent language. There's absolutely no need to change a single word in it. What we've run into in other towns is occasionally there are town attorneys or different councils that decide that they want the wording to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And when I've been given an opportunity to read it, I've been able to tell them, you really don't want to make that change because you're opening up loopholes for yourself. Or you've now violated federal interstate commerce laws, or, you know, there's another problem. So I've worked very closely with towns. I've worked very closely with champions in government that want to pass the most comprehensive language to protect their towns. And, you know, I welcome that opportunity with Southbury.
So I think you could forward that to me, and if you have the ordinances that, you must have the ones that the other towns have done, that you could also forward, and I'll get that to the board if that's what we can do and start taking a look.
That'd be great. I have one other comment and also question. When an ordinance risks becoming symbolic is if there's no reasonable enforcement of said ordinance, even if it's only a $250 fine. If our local law enforcement is not enforcing the ordinance and aware of the ordinance, then that ordinance becomes symbolic only. So have there been any learnings over the relatively short time that ordinances have been in place as it grows in other communities, either in Connecticut or in New York, for example, to demonstrate success or deterrence that's been in place, and procedures that have been in place, and I go back to sort of the lens operating procedures put in place to make an ordinance meaty and meaningful.
Right. Unfortunately, the only way you're really going to be able to enforce this if you see suspicious behavior happening. So there is an enforcement clause that some towns have added in, which talks about, giving the first selectman or the town manager the authority to, pursue legal matters, issue cease and desist orders, that a third party can be called out to come in and test where a spill or a leakage might have occurred, and that it would not have to be any type of town employee that endeavors to do that. What people need to understand is that though you're trying to ban this particular waste because there's so much of it that's being produced and shipped out from Pennsylvania, your response to this would be the same as if a oil truck was driving down the road and a police officer or a passerby picked up their cell phone and called and said, there's a tanker truck leaking as it drives down our roadway. So similar to that, if somebody suspects that dumping is occurring in your woods, they pick up the phone and make a phone call, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that a public education element of
Right.
the why of this, and sort of the civic engagement that's required
Right.
for an ordinance such as this to have an impact would be important too.
But the biggest issue is making sure that contractors that the town contracts with to do your snow removal are signing a provision that says, yes, we won't source any materials from fracking waste. Contractors knowing that that are working in town, and that property owners can't then apply to DEEP for a license to become a transfer site.
You mentioned cease and desist, but what about like a cease and restore? If somebody's going to use a contaminated material,
Yeah.
isn't there a legal kind of muscle you can apply to
Yeah.
make them take the material out? I mean, it's incredibly expensive to do that.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than $250.
Yeah.
I think that would
Yeah.
fall onto our local authority and to the first selectman's office and the board, and then enforcing it through our town attorney
Yeah.
for damages.
Yeah, and different towns have tweaked the penalties paragraph or section differently.
Once you have a ban in place, then maybe that cease and restore
Right.
becomes more enforceable.
Yeah, yeah.
So 169 towns, 32 have passed it, 33 is partially passed it. Are you targeting all of the towns? Forgive me for using that. It's
No,
kind of a cheesy way
I
of
understand.
saying it.
Yeah,
Sorry to make it like that.
If we can't get our state General Assembly to pass the same riverkeeper language that's already passed in 32 towns, I will be continuing year after year, going town by town, trying to get as many properties protected as possible.
Have you gone to any towns and they've not pursued it?
No, we have had 100% success rate. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Anybody else?
Let's not mess up that record.
I felt it was worthwhile, right, Tom?
Yeah.
But we had a lot going on, so,
Thank you for your
Good
time.
word of the,
Thank you very much.
okay, we're all set with,
She's gonna send you some information, and
Yes.
you'll circulate it to all of
yes,
us? Is that
yes.
what's gonna
And
happen?
I'd ask that we
Tom
put it
Tom
on the
has her
agenda for
number,
our
I
next
have,
meeting under new
he has
business.
my number, they can find me.
And Betsy has copied the PowerPoint presentation, so you'll have access to the slides.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
so much,
for
and
all
thank
you're
you for
doing.
coming all this way. I'm not sure where you're from,
South Glastonbury.
and I know you just left work and came
Great
here,
town.
and thank you. Okay. We're through the presentations. Nice. Next on is public comment. Is there any public comment? We've limited it to 3 minutes.
No, Arthur? Not good.
No, Arthur.
Since he's not here, so we're not.
If he shows up,
Yeah,
we'll
Arthur's not here.
put him back.
Well, if Arthur shows up, I'll sit down. First of all, good evening. Lorraine Marcantonio, 252A, Kruger Drive, Heritage Village. And I see she's not here, but I wanted to thank Tabitha for her presentation on the senior center. And also, I was extremely pleased to hear that you do not have to be a member to use the buses, because I have an issue with the application form that was mailed out to all of the people. All transparency, I've already met with Tabitha on this, so she knows my concerns. With the package that went out for those of us that were considering becoming members again, there were 2 pieces of paper that I found upsetting, and so did a number of people who have, and couples who have come to me in the village and saying, but why do we have to do this? And it goes to the bottom line. As I said, I was happy to hear that you do not have to be a member to use the buses, because of a report that was in Voices, which said if you want to partake of the programs at the senior center, you had to be a member. Now to get back to my issue. The first page asked a significant number of medical history, including what I consider privacy. Am I on a blood thinner? Now, I understand the reasons that the senior center wants to have some medical information when you're taking classes and you're doing things. My contention is there are other means of getting that information and keeping it private. I mean, we have HIPAA law that says that you really need to do this. So that was the first form. The second form has a page, and it's basically a Save Harmless form that we are requested to sign when we become members. Meaning, if a piece of equipment, or even if a carpet has a corner upturned and I trip and hurt myself, I have signed this agreement saying that I let the senior center and the town, Save Harmless, cannot sue if I break a leg, my problem. Okay? That concerns me a little bit. Now, I was told, well, it's okay, you can always go back and sue anyway. That's still a little off-putting. Now, I referenced the article in Voices, which was well-written, very comprehensive. But right in the middle of that article, it said if you wanted to partake in any of the programs at the senior center, you had to be a member. Now, reading those forms, if I want to be a member, I have to fill out the medical, and I have to do the same harmless. My question I wanted to find out was if in fact that holds. If I pay my fee and refuse to fill out the medical and the Save Harmless, can I still become a member? And that's my basic question, because I had a number of people come to me as a resident in the village that really want to do that. They love the senior center activities.
3 minutes, thank you.
Okay,
you.
so get an answer for me, please. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Thank you. Rich Boritz from Heritage Village. And I just wanted to chain on to what Lorraine said. I also have been called by some of my friends who were concerned about the reapplication. And there are some people who are considering not becoming a member again because they do not want to fill out the form. It's invasive. It asks questions that people are uncomfortable answering. And I think I'm surprised that I was asked to speak by some people because I don't go to the senior center. However, they were concerned enough and not comfortable enough to come here. So I said I would speak for them. And I think that needs to be looked at. And I'm not sure that sending out the form and then saying afterward, well, you don't have to fill it out, is the proper solution. I think something needs to be done so that that form either gets revised or is called back, and people are notified who received the original form that they do not have to fill that out, that there is another form that they could fill out at the senior center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Tom,
Yeah.
you could have spoke at the fracking.
Let's not talk
Well,
about
usually
that.
I'm talking about land trust and open space, but today I'm here to talk about fracking. And I don't want to repeat too many things that Jen said. I thought it was a terrific report. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. But I did some research and came up with some facts that you might be interested in putting into your thought process. One thing was the amount of materials that come out of the fracking process. Over 1 million gallons of toxic and radioactive wastewater from one well in the Pennsylvania Marcellus Shale, and 100 tons of hazardous solid waste. And that stuff is going places. We don't want it to go here, is my opinion. I had a list of all the stuff that is contained in those wastes, and I won't bore you with that because you can go through her PowerPoint and see it on her slides. But I did want to mention the bill that was in the legislature this past year. I'm kind of sorry Arthur isn't here. I thought he was going to be here, but yeah, because he could probably tell us a little bit more about this too. It went into the Environment Committee and passed out with a favorable report. And the report, I just want to give you a little quote from the Environment Committee's report. State residents, by their public testimony, and several municipalities by their ordinances, do not want fracking waste in their communities. This bill permanently bans collecting, storing, handling, transporting, disposing, and using hydraulic fracturing in waste in Connecticut. Pretty strong statement. As Jen said, it passed in the House, but it stalled in the Senate. I don't know why. During testimony on the bill, I think there were a couple of interesting comments that kind of sum up the situation. Lori Brown, the executive director of the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters, said that while fracking itself is not likely in Connecticut, our state could become a dumping ground for the unwanted waste products from fracking in other states. Citizens want the state to take action to permanently prohibit the disposal, treatment, storage, handling, de-icing applications, and other uses of fracking waste and byproducts anywhere in Connecticut. Also, Carolyn Bain testified to the Environment Committee, and she's the water resource specialist for the League of Women Voters in Connecticut. I'm
I'm sorry, Tom. 3 minutes.
Okay.
Send that along
I
to
think
me.
we need an ordinance.
I think we've heard. Okay, any other public comment? There you go. You want Tom's notes?
No, it's okay. Yeah. I just want to speak in support of Tom and Jen, who did a great presentation. I talked to Selectman Rosen.
Please could you give your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Shay Brown, 32 Bagley Road. I got to meet Mike over the summer, drank a couple beers, got to know him, talk politics. Basically, the big picture of this is I wanted to do something because I was upset about the Oxford power plant. I know if Oxford saw a presentation like that, I think they'd think twice about putting something like that in their town, because I always see the letters to the editor about preservation of rural character, and it's just kind of funny because that's you just threw it out the window when those smokestacks come up by the airport, and they get all the tax revenue and we get all the pollution. So in the big picture of things, this ordinance, however symbolic it might seem, in the grand scheme of things, the hurricanes we've had, the wildfires we're having, all this stuff's connected. It's scientific, it's real. I took a class on it. It wasn't Al Gore, it was just my community college professor. And, to think about our national monuments being decimated, and then the announcement that we just heard, and that was put forth by Teddy Roosevelt, who was a Republican, the Antiquities Act. Whatever we can do, no matter how small, I think it really helps, and it sends a message to future generations that we do care about something that is a very big problem and something we can do. So I hope you'll consider in the future, and congrats on your re-election, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on. Announcements and correspondence. Any questions? Moving on to the consent agenda. Before we get too far there, I don't know if you saw in your packet, but Doris Andrews has resigned for, I think there's a few health issues. We wish her well. We talk about how much time we know how difficult our time is here, but this is somebody who has put a lot of time into our town and certainly has made it a better community because of that. So I want to thank publicly Doris Andrews for her service to our town and on the commission, senior commission, and we'll move forward from there. So I'll end any questions on the consent agenda.
I have a question about the job description, not the description itself, but is this an existing position? Because there's no one listed as the current holder.
Do you have the job description up there? I'm sorry?
Yes.
Sorry, that's all.
Right there.
So did I. Who's leaving?
Right.
So what we're looking for in that, we have a number of openings that we're trying to fill. The problem is a lot of them are questionably full-time. And there's, from time to time, need in different departments, depending on, like, the tax season. We get tax collection and stuff. We've had people help us come in downstairs. They come up and they give a hand in there. There's times when we need them on the third floor. There's an opening up there, and this would give flexibility so that this person can be used in the different areas. In the tax season, it may be that you need them. It's not so much you go here for 4 hours and then go there for 3 hours. It's like, okay, we need you for 4 weeks here in the tax office because they're processing and whatnot. So I believe we've had a floater, and we're just trying to firm up that this is how we would utilize them.
Is this a position, though this may be a new description, is this a position that currently exists, or are we creating a new position that we're now going to hire someone for?
There was a person there was 3 people in the tax office. One, my understanding, was a floater, but it was focused in that tax office. and there's not, we've gotten through with really 2 people in the tax office except for during that. And I think that was a floater. Yeah, it was a floater position. So this will, it was a floater position, but this firms up that.
And there's a vacancy in the land use.
And there's a vacancy in land use, and we've been doing, they need, not necessarily, we don't know if it's gonna be full-time, so we use, this floater position, which it does exist. And this is just a,
So do we have a floater who's left, or did we hire
so our
that
tax
person to
collector has,
do
a
something
tax
else?
collector left. Lori became our, assistant tax collector became our tax collector. The person who was a floater down there became the assistant tax collector. She's gonna take that job, because she's been doing it, in the tax office. And now there's still technically a floater, but who, so it's really a clarification of that job.
But did that position report to the first selectman also, or report to,
Did that position report?
did that floater
The floater, was
in
that
tax
position was to?
report to the first
The
select?
tax clerk, part of her duties was to be a floater in other departments.
Right. So this
But
gives.
So
it
this-
does, it, yeah, go ahead.
No.
It sound, I mean, it does sound like this is because there's no incumbent listed, or otherwise the name of the incumbent would be there,
Right.
that it is a new position to fill the roles of multiple positions that are currently open.
Yes, yes.
Right.
That are currently open.
Yes.
So the question I would have, is, my assumption would be that this will not be incremental.
No.
In terms of salary, and et cetera. It would fill gaps within the organizational chart.
Correct.
That won't be filled because we're creating this new floater role.
It's more of a clarification of that position and puts it under, to the first selectman to where they need to be at what time. Other than, I mean, that position does exist, but it's not good, and that, so they essentially can do the same thing.
So the prior position, if I'm understanding it correctly, was someone in the tax office that worked in the tax office part of the time, and another part of their job responsibilities was a floater.
That was the technical.
Is that the
Yes.
old position?
Yes.
Okay. And now what we're doing is we're creating a new position, really, because it's no longer tax office focused. We're creating a new position of a floater who's going to be assigned as we deem appropriate around.
Correct.
So can we eliminate that other position?
Yes.
That's really what
Yes.
I have a concern about adding a position.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
not in budget season right now. We're getting into that, very soon.
Yes.
So it's a question of, my first question is, can this wait till budget season so we can look at all the positions and determine what's appropriate? Or is there some sort of urgent need that we need this new position now rather than just hiring someone part-time to fill in?
Right. This essentially puts it under my office so I can get them where they need to be. The position, formerly they were in that tax office and they tended to stay in the tax office. And sometimes we need them. And this is in an effort to figure out frankly, where we do need people. We've been operating we've been operating with these shortages for quite some time, due to a number of reasons. And so far, we've been operating pretty well.
But
Well, you mentioned land use, though, if I may.
We're down one in land use, we're gonna now be down one in the tax office.
So how does,
This is gonna take and allow us to fill those positions with one person and have them available to us.
Right.
So when I go to planning and Dolores and Debbie say that they're down a person and that's why they're trying to play catch-up and everything, are they on board with having what sounds like a possible share position?
Yes, Dolores talked to me about getting possibly a part-time person, which isn't full-time. You have to remember that there was also, they're up some hours with the deputy fire marshal, who also works in that office land use also.
Okay.
So and frankly, Chris McGinnis has stepped in, a new hire, he's relatively new, and he's done a very good job, and he gets a lot done. So this has helped. So we're trying to manage that without, in this manner.
So are there two positions then that can
Are
be
open.
eliminated by this?
Not saying they're eliminated.
But they're
We're-
still
But
open.
for the
We're
next-
changing this one position.
Through the rest of this fiscal year, they'll be eliminated. That's the
That
only
remains to be
question I
seen.
have.
That remains to be seen. This is a change of control of that person to the first selectman is essentially what's happening and where they're needed. So we,
But the expectation you have, and the intent at least, let's call it the intent, is that by creating this new position through the end of this fiscal year, we'll see if that works.
Correct.
And this is what I'd go to Jason's point, that through the end of this fiscal year, we'll see if that works.
Correct.
With the hope that it will eliminate those two positions through then, and as we get into budget season and we're looking at July 1st, that the organizational chart may change. And
Without additional
either
headcount.
we'll keep this position within the Office of First Selectman as a floater loaned out to those two departments, or you might go back and say, we're bringing those two back.
correct.
Because I understand that I think it's a long time to wait until the end of the fiscal year to fill that position, because it's not just budget season. It would be waiting until.
My concern is more, we have two open positions now, and to address that, we're creating a new position. So now we have really 3 open positions in the town.
You're actually, no, you're changing the one.
You're
go-
taking 2 and combining them into one.
But we are,
that's-
then we
I
want,
don't have
then
the
you are
budget-
eliminating those positions.
I don't have the
That was
budget
the
to
question I
add
asked.
that person, a third person. I don't have the budget.
So are we eliminating positions?
So you will not be filling those 2 other positions with this hire, assuming we make this hire.
Correct. Because the 2 positions are open, you're only changing the one position to becoming under the first selectman to determine. So when they come to me, they say, I need help in the tax office for the next 2 months. They're in and they give during tax season, they're able to do that. Then I can direct them because they need help up at the 3rd floor in land use. I can say, okay, then map out what you need and what you need to get done, and I can send them up there.
And those positions are open, and there's not going to be a search to fill those positions. This will be that for at least through the end of this fiscal year. And if in 2 months you come back to us, or Dolores or someone else, comes back and says it's not working, we'll have to have that discussion again.
Right.
We'll have to have that discussion
But
again.
this is not an additional head count.
Right.
This is
Well, it's not an additional.
changing the one head
I
count.
understand how it's working in practice, and I completely agree
Right.
that it needs to, my concern goes to something different than how it's
Right.
gonna work in practice. It's sort of, I'm just concerned about having 2 positions and then now having 3. But if
There's
they're-
still only 2.
But if one of those is just changing, because this doesn't, usually when we get a description, and this is why I've asked the question,
Right.
usually when we get the description and we're changing the name of the position, and we're doing something like that, it's all redlined and it shows what it was and what it's becoming, and this just looked like something new, which is,
Yeah, that's not what.
so I just had, so I'm fine with all that, that makes sense, as long as we're not filling those other positions. Once we do fill positions, it does come back to us. I just ask that if, for some reason, that we decide we need to fill the positions, that you come to the board before putting it out and noticing it, not after, just for approval, so we can have this discussion again.
That's reasonable. Yeah, that's not a problem.
I
All
think
right.
there is tremendous value in having a floater. And the reason is because there are times, like you're saying, that there's a busy season, and so that person picks up. But then there's also the maternity, and then there's the death, and then there's, people go out. So it's nice to have somebody cross-trained somewhat, and that person serves as that function. So as long as it's not adding a 3rd position.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what we run into. And I want to say that the employees in town have been wonderful about pitching in. Betsy, when we first came in, was in many different places helping. And that's very valuable. Exactly, the cross training with that. So and sometimes there's a lull in other departments, and if that's the case, you're also able to use them to do some other things that you need to be done, is exactly what the floater position. And I'm trying to firm that floater position, I think was the intent to begin with, back to where it was supposed to be and utilize that tool in that way. Make sense? Okay. I'm not, well, I'll tell you, at head counting, you got a lot to talk to the Board of Finance about, so, all
Move
right.
to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
I have to abstain, Jeff. I have a family member getting one of the refunds, so.
Okay, one abstention.
There's his reason.
And thank you for clarifying that, because technically we are supposed to clarify conflict of interest and why, and I appreciate that, Judge. I appreciate that. Keep us on track, will you? Okay, minutes of November 16th.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And it's carried. I don't think we have any unfinished business with us. Any new business? Not much to report in the first selectmen's report. We're moving along pretty good on that. If we can move quickly on the reports from a liaison, we do have an executive session.
Road study, we didn't have anything. IT is next week. Region 15 space study has been canceled the last two months, so I thought there was a meeting prior, but there wasn't. That was canceled too, but nobody bothered to tell me. I guess nobody shows up to the things anymore. I don't know what's going on. I called Keith and asked him to call me back, but he didn't, so I can't give you any kind of updates on what's happening. Streetscape, there's some stuff we could talk about, but I'd rather hold off. I want to meet with you, Jeff, at some point and review kind of where we're at, what we're thinking. We have had meetings as a group, and I think we're on a pathway to a consensus. But before I bring it up for general discussion, I'd like to make sure that you and John are on board.
Set it up.
Okay.
Set up the meeting at my office.
Okay, economic development will meet next week. They did have, you may have known, a very successful Small Business Saturday after Thanksgiving. A lot of people came out.
Yes.
And got involved in a huge undertaking by Ann and the rest of the commission. So good job for them. IPOC, you saw we had a 5-minute meeting recently to change participant in the plan. It was
the way to do it.
chop on a Monday morning, and Energy Task Force did not meet in 2017.
There's still time.
No, there's not.
Jason?
LUPC didn't meet. Library met last night. Big news at the library is their fiber's installed and their Wi-Fi and everything. Internet's all working really well, very fast. Haven't gotten complaints like they usually do, and they were singing Ray's praises. A big thank you to Ray from everyone at the library for all the work he did and all the time he spent and all his work with the state, and there was a lot of very nice positive comments about Ray. The Friends reported that pretty much they have their sale going on. It's ongoing through the holidays in the lobby, and it apparently they're selling out of most of their merchandise. It's going pretty well. The only other thing is budget related. They handed in their proposed budget on the town side to the first selectman's office, and they started going through their good fund budget last night, and they'll continue that review at the next meeting. So, that's it.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Senior Commission, you all heard Tameth, and we've got the focal point designation, which is very nice, but we do have an issue with regards to the cuts at the state, and we'll have to pursue that more. Strategic Planning Task Force, rather than give this board a 6-month update, we've decided that we're going to have a second presentation to the public in January, and you are all invited on January 25th at 7 o'clock, and we'll provide you with an update and see public input. That is a Thursday.
Okay, great, I'll be back.
That is a Thursday. We are still awaiting word on the grant to fund our community outreach, and the individual work groups continue to do their assigned tasks. One thing that I do now with great regularity is attend the local prevention council, which is a smaller version of SMART, and No surprise, what was reported the last time was that the hostility and anger projected throughout the television media is trickling down to the kids. There's a rise in the situations involving youth and police, and that vaping in the high school is increasing. Pomperaug District Department of Health and SMART will be working collaboratively to put on a presentation at B'nai Israel to promote a mission of the U.S. Attorney's Heroin Education Action Team, it's called HEAT, to reduce the growing harm to Connecticut families and communities caused by heroin and opioid abuse. And Neil has made a stronger presence and commitment to being part of our local prevention council. And then, as maybe some of you read in today's Republican American, there's this new mother and son nonprofit organization that's going to be putting on support groups for families dealing with opioid and alcohol addictions. The son himself is a reformed reformed opioid addict, and he is trying to give back to the community. And they will be holding their first Southbury sponsor program support group. At the United Church of Christ on January 10th at 7 o'clock. So good things are happening for our community. While we have a real epidemic, there's a lot of people interested in reaching out to help. So we need to engage them and help when we can. From our point.
And frankly, a meeting with the sergeant today, a staff meeting with him today, they have used the Narcan a number of times currently, and they all live on all of our streets. They're always, it's not any one neighborhood, good, bad, $1 million houses. It's in every neighborhood and in every corner of our community, one way or the other. So they are coming in to I have a meeting scheduled with them, CARES.
Yes.
And I owe you that letter, and I don't know if I'm going to get it.
I know.
I'm calling. Anyway, we do, so thank you.
Good stuff.
Mike?
It's just a quick question relative to one of the public comments on senior commission. Did the commission review that new form and approve it or provide any feedback on it before it went out to the public? Do you know?
I missed a meeting when I had my surgery, so I have it in my
Yeah,
notes to
I'm
check.
just curious to find that out.
I can get
find
that
that
out.
out. Or if also town council had a chance to review something like that.
We're getting a look at it.
So, great. Parks and Rec has not met since our last meeting and is meeting today, ironically, coincidentally with this.
We're gonna throw you under
But
the bus, Mike.
I informed them I wouldn't be able to attend and that I look forward to seeing them in the new year. The next meeting actually is on the 25th, so I'm going to see if we can look at that. Because I do want to attend the strategic planning meeting. I did attend EMS earlier in the week. One of the things that there's an ongoing frustration with the system that's being used for dispatch. It's not a personnel issue. It's really about the system they're using. They had discussions about and had a draft of a letter, and I believe they've had some conversations with Corporal Grillo. I recommended that when they finalize a letter that they were sending to him, that they include you on that letter as chief of police also in town, so you're aware of this, but so that you're aware of the situation and their concerns, and also in terms of transparency to the First Selectman's office. I think you should be aware of those, and they're going to copy me as liaison as well on that letter. They've begun work on a town EMS plan that's due sometime in 2018 for the state. There is no hard date according to what their knowledge is for that, but they don't seem overly concerned about the plan. They have some ongoing really important public education initiatives that are going on. They submit regularly, at least once a month, something to Voices to be included about various issues, whether that be a class they're offering or a public safety issue, et cetera, flu season, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't always run, so I made some suggestions to them about having a personal meeting with the publisher and editor at Voices to get it as a regular feature. I think it'd really be good, and working with Facebook to get it out there as well for a younger audience. Call volume's up, so it's something they're continuing to look at and continuing in the discussions about that happened last summer when we were negotiating and finalizing the contract on a potential in-town medic. So they're continuing to have internal discussions about that. And their next meeting is February 7th, so because they don't meet on a monthly basis. Region 15, I did not attend, but Region 15 met on Monday. Superintendent Botsford formally They formally accepted her resignation at the end of, effective at the end of the season, and the search committee will be getting underway in earnest. The other thing I would like to share is that there were two members of the Board of Education who that was their last meeting. One of them being Janet Butkus, the other being Pat Perry, and I think we should wish them well. And particularly, I think the town owes Southbury owes an enormous debt of gratitude to Pat Perry for decades of service to Region 15 Board of Education, and most recently serving as its most recent chair. So both personally, and I say on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, we thank her for her service.
You said Regina's resignation is through the season, so is that through the school year till 2018?
Yep.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
You. Thank you.
Okay. Any other business? Entertain a motion to move into executive session to discuss pending legal matter, tree cutting on town property, inviting Cindy Harrison into, with us.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're in executive session.
How are you, Joe?